Good evening. I want to welcome you to our second annual Social Services Forum and want to congratulate you on not being scared of some wind and rain to be able to come out here today. And my name is Pastor Robin Weinstein, the pastor of Bethany Grace Community Church, and it's our pleasure to host you and welcome you and thank all the social service groups that are represented here tonight. And this service, or our time together, is actually going to be placed on YouTube for all those people that were scared of coming out. That way they will have those resources there. And I want to introduce the mayor, who will give some welcome. There you go, man. Where's that applause sign there? And a good friend of ours, Mayor Albert Kelly.
Thank you, Pastor. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out. As Pastor said, I appreciate you coming out. Despite the storm warnings, you thought it necessary to be here so that we can share and gather information on how we can make our county and our community a better community. Not everybody has the resources necessary to thrive in our community, but with good people like yourselves who are willing to brave the elements, the summertime, then we all know what happens during the wintertime, during cold blue, coming out in the middle of the night, cooking meals and gathering resources. All I can do is say thank you. Thank you for being the type of community that you are, a caring community. And so I appreciate Pastor Weinstein for allowing us to utilize his church to have this second community forum. But also, let me just... Yesterday, I got an email from him saying that he could not be here, so he asked me to step in and to help facilitate. But I said to myself, if there's any way possible, he'll be back. And so he flew. He got back here about 45 minutes ago, and so that shows his dedication.
Looking good there.
Yeah.
They are looking good.
Next year, wear long pants there, please. But I thank everybody for what you're doing. I had the great opportunity today to be visited from Miss Audrey Rowe. She's the chief administrator out of Washington overseeing food programs. And so we asked her, can they co-chair a food summit this fall? And they said yes. Not only the national government, it would be the state government, who would help for us to have a food summit. They were telling us all about all the great programs going on that they have and things I never heard of. I've been in social services 30 years, never heard of these programs. So I asked her, can we come together so you can tell us all about these programs and how we can access these programs? Because she said, you get a contract with us, it's self-sufficient, it pays for itself. So my ears perked up, Pastor, just like yours would. And so this coming November, I'm claiming a date in November. We're going to have a food summit with the federal government hosting it here in our community, maybe even here in our church, so that they can connect us to all the programs that they have. They told us about programs in which we can take meals to senior citizens, meals to the football team, because they come home many times to empty kitchens, and meals to the track team, and all type of innovative things that we can take meals to the clinics and to the hospitals, wherever there's people, they said we can take meals to them, get reimbursed, and we can continue the program on and on and on. That's just one of the things she talked about. And so I'm enthusiastic. I thank you. Look forward to working with each and every one of you. Whoever's on YouTube, you should have been here, but that's all right. We'll have you here next time. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. So when we started this forum last year, the reason for the forum was it emerged out of Code Blue. That was one of the principal reasons of getting information about all the different resources that are out there. We recognize that there are lots of nonprofits out there. There are lots of governmental agencies that are out there. And unfortunately, the system that is out there is a fragmented system, and it can be very hard to navigate that system, both as someone who's advocating on behalf of individuals and someone who actually has to go through that process themselves. And it can become a very intimidating process, a time-consuming process, and you're left without hope. And in fact, so let me just give you a brief story of the importance of the advocacy part of this evening and why I'm so excited about our guest speaker here. So I did have to fly down yesterday morning on a last-minute trip to Florida because my father had a heart attack and kidney issues and all kinds of different things that were going on. Flew down because when you have older people that are a little dramatic, in a hospital situation, they don't hear things quite as they should. So my father was quite convinced that this was going to be the end, and had me convinced and everybody else. And I walked down there, and I didn't walk down. I flew down last minute and walked in his room, and there he was looking at me, and I'll tell you, he was naked lying there, and I went, that was not what I was expecting when I walked in to find you on your deathbed. But I guess it's kind of right. You're born naked and you die naked there. You don't take anything in. But I go, you're alive. I wasn't quite expecting this, but okay. And we had this conversation, but I tell you this story because you have a lot of doctors coming in the room. You have a cardiologist. You have a person you have a social worker. You have somebody that's looking at the rehab. You have a person looking at the kidneys, a person looking at the brain, a person looking at this, and it gets very confusing and very overwhelming for an individual that finds themselves in a crisis. When you are showing up at any type of social services, you are in a crisis and you feel overwhelmed. And the whole idea is that if we can start informing one another and empowering one another to walk alongside of one another, then we don't have to face these situations alone. Then it adds resources to those people, those angels in the field that are the advocates that are already out there. You're going to hear from them tonight, the people that are working in these social service agencies. They need people that are going to be advocates that are getting the information out, that are getting the right resources to people, that are feeding things back to them. Because this is a problem that we can all work together. And that's what we see within Code Blue, is that the community came together. But not just Code Blue. There's all kinds of things that are going on. You'll hear from Revive South Jersey and CASA and the Family Strengthening Network and all these different things. I got to tell you, I'm really excited as kind of a young guy myself, even though you can't tell from my head, that there are there's a lot of movement among a lot of the young people and people of all generations, those who are more mature than us. How'd you like that? Not old, just more mature. Recycled teenagers. So, but there's a lot of movement going on in Cumberland County. And in fact, this past week I was contacted by Cape May, and I've been contacted by Gloucester about the different things that we are doing here. And we are looking at things at the Board of Social Services about ways to improve services to clients. I went undercover there was it last week, right, Andy, there? Just last week, and brought information back to them and said, this is what it's like when you're actually sitting out there, so let's change it up. So there's a lot of good things happening, and speaking of that, that is a good segue to our speaker this evening. I heard Melissa at a Rotary event, but she heard of me and I heard of her, and of course we had John as a common denominator back there, and I was very inspired by her story and how she went from really kind of wandering for purpose to being an advocate, to being a real voice for social change and a real cog in the wheel of progress of things that are coming our way down here. So without further ado, let's give Melissa a round of applause. You got to use the mic.
Thank you, Pastor Dr. Robin Weinstein. Okay. First, I just want to thank you for inviting me here tonight into your church, into your community, and for everything that Bethany does in the community, in the streets, in the lives of our most vulnerable people, the homeless, the disabled, the orphaned. This church is a real light in this city, and everything good that I hear about in the newspaper or at the water cooler, people are talking about feeding the homeless or shower ministries or things that are going on. This church always seems to be right at the center of it, and that is a real testament. And so it's just a tremendous privilege to be here tonight. I'm in church, so I hope you don't mind if I preach a little bit. I want to share my testimony. I give a lot of speeches, and very rarely in churches, so I don't get to tell my testimony much. So I hope you'll indulge me. I'd like to talk a little bit tonight about the great miracles that Jesus Christ has done in my life, and how that's brought me to advocacy and the work that I believe that Christ is calling us to do together here in Bridgeton and beyond. So I grew up here in this area. I grew up at Wesley United Methodist Church in Pearl Street. That's home for me. It's where I went to Vacation Bible School. It's where I was baptized in the faith. I went there until its doors closed my whole entire life. My grandmother, my grandparents, they were very involved there. And my first volunteer experience was in the Vacation Bible School when I was 12 years old. Some of my best memories in life are right here on Pearl Street, working in that kitchen with my grandmother. I grew up here. I grew up on Morton Avenue. My grandparents lived on Woodruff Road. And I couldn't wait to get out of this place. I really couldn't. I was a terrible student in school. I almost failed every grade, and I did fail 9th grade at Shallock High School. I went to school less than half of the year, and then Ranch Hope and the courts came calling, and the court ordered me to get services, outpatient services at Ranch Hope. And that was my last year living in this area until very recently. Two things that I really remember. One, I remember obviously failing in school. I remember the experience at Ranch Hope. And my last session at Ranch Hope, I remember it very vividly. The doctor told my dad that I was sick and that I could be excused from school for the rest of the year because I couldn't go back. So we drove from Ranch Hope, and my dad stopped at Shallock High School, and I went in with the doctor's note, and I cleaned out my locker, and I told my teachers I wasn't coming back. And then I went home and I said a prayer, and I prayed to God, and I said, God, I want to be useful. I want to make some kind of contribution in the world. I've never read a book. I'm failing 9th grade. Can you use somebody like me? Is there any role for somebody like me to play? And I had a friend at the time. She was my very, very best friend in the entire world. We were like sisters. We spent all of our time together. And she was going through her own hard time. She was being severely abused and neglected. And so every day, we would spend time together after school, and then we'd have this like crisis moment where she'd have to go home. And she didn't want to go home, because when she got home, bad things happened. And so when I was on my face on the floor, praying to God that day, I said, God, and if I could be useful, could it be for people like my best friend? can I help her? Can you use me to help her? You know, if I escape here, if I go far away and get out of this place, and you give me a second chance, I will spend every day, every waking moment, every breath trying to figure out how I can help her and kids like her. So the judge ordered that I go live with my mom in Florida. And before I did, I wanted to take one last stand for my friend. So I went to the guidance counselor, and I told the guidance counselor that my friend was being abused and neglected. The division came, you know, she was interviewed. She was never allowed to talk to me again because her parents were outraged. The whole situation went down. I never spoke to her again. Then the court ordered custody to my mom. I moved to Florida. I was on a plane, and I never thought I'd come back. A mentor came into my life and encouraged me to volunteer with homeless kids. So here I am. I failed 9th grade. I failed 10th grade. I've never read a book. And this mentor encourages me to go to the homeless shelter and volunteer with these homeless kids. So I go to the shelter, and I get there, and there's a dozen homeless kids waiting for me. And it was a feeling I'd never experienced before. No one had ever been so excited for me to show up. And I just was hanging out with the kids for the afternoon. There was a little girl. She was 5 years old. Her name was Ashley. She attached to me. She wouldn't leave me alone. I was reading her stories. And I had this revelation in that moment. It was one of the most important revelations of my life. I realized, you know, I had all these questions, right? Like, to God, can you use me? Can you use somebody like me? Can you use someone who has quite literally never read a book, failed 9th and 10th grade, and ranked dead last in my high school class by every objective standard, has absolutely nothing to contribute? Can you use somebody like me? Do I have a role to play? And in that moment, Jesus answered me. He said, you do have a role to play and a contribution to make just by showing up. And I heard that in my heart, my soul. What do you mean? How can that make the difference? And I realized that in a world of billions of people, billions, I was the only person who had shown up that day. I had done more than billions of other people just in the act of showing up. Well, how can showing up help? Because to Ashley, I was reflecting to her worth and value by showing up. It mattered to her. What was I saying to her in my act of being there? That she mattered, that her story mattered, that somebody cared enough to show up and be present and to read her a story and to learn about her life. And does she like The Little Mermaid? Or, you know, what? I made a difference in Ashley's life because I demonstrated to her that she was worth showing up for. I share that story because sometimes I think one of the things that holds us back from advocating for others is we look in the mirror, we evaluate our own abilities, and we think, I have nothing to really contribute. So I walked out of that shelter that day, and I never failed another class. And within 10 years of that pivotal moment, I had started a national organization with 70,000 youth members. I graduated from high school, I graduated from college, I graduated from law school. God called me to Colorado, didn't know why, just felt the leading. Got there, in a few months, the Columbine massacre happened. I got a call from the social worker at Columbine who said, "I've heard about you. How? I don't know. Will you come down here and help out?" And I spent my entire time in Colorado working with the kids that were wounded but survived the Columbine massacre. And then after that, I didn't know what I was going to do. And then 9/11 happened, and a kid from Columbine called and said, "I feel that wave of powerlessness. Is there anything we can do?" And I called my grandmother at Wesley United Methodist Church, and I said, "I think what we need to do in the wake of 9/11 is, on the 1-year anniversary, millions of people need to go out and express their values by serving each other. We need to have a global day of service. We need to mobilize millions of people in response to 9/11, so that when terrorists around the world get a little bit nervous, that when they do their scared, fearful acts of violence, that what it's going to cause is a reaction of love that ripples throughout the world." So I came back here to Bridgeton, and we gave speeches at different churches and Rotary that my grandmother had set up, and we organized projects in 150 nations in all 50 states, and millions of people came out and volunteered. And Rich Nichols in the back, right there with the blue shirt, he was there at the Lincoln Memorial on 9/11, on the 1-year anniversary, and he gave the prayer to the national audience, and we created a national response that was then endorsed by the president in his radio address. So, within 10 years of that volunteer experience, I just kept saying to God, I'm not going to limit. I know who I am. To this very day, I'm the kid that was last in my class and had never read a book. That's who I am. But I also know who Jesus is in my life. And I will never, ever limit that. So I have to tell the story because it's recent, and then I'll tell you all about the projects that we're working on. My best friend, right? I heard through the grapevine about 10 years later that she didn't survive. And I had this conversation with God when I wasn't happy. I was angry because when I got on my face, I made a deal with God, a bargain, that if I escaped, I would go out and I would learn something or get some kind of tools, and that I'd come back and I'd figure out how to help my friend specifically. And over time, I came to terms with it. Okay, well, maybe God was never going to answer my prayer specifically, right? Maybe he's made me an advocate for children generally, and in that, I'm fulfilling my promise and commitment to him to help her. And so I came back a couple of years ago. I felt God calling me back to this town, to this area. And I became the executive director of Court Appointed Special Advocates, which is a local organization that raises up community volunteers just like you, and we appoint you to a particular child or case of a child who's been abused or neglected, and you become their advocate. So I became the executive director of this program. And one of the things that we did in this program is we created something called the First Star Academy. It was funded by the Pascal Sykes Foundation. This was our very first year for the Academy. The program is all about helping children in foster care graduate from college. So less than 2% of children in foster care graduate. More than half end up on the streets or in jail within 2 years of aging out. A large portion of the population in our local jails and on our streets are former foster youth. Cumberland County has the highest rates of abuse and neglect in the state. 105 child abuse investigations for every 1,000 children, double the state average, 10%. That's completely unacceptable. So this project, this First Star project, we went out and we recruited a group of 37th and 8th grade foster youth, and we want to change the statistics for them. So we lived this summer on the campus of Rowan University with these kids. They took college classes, life skills. If they're experiencing college, our theory is that they're going to be more likely to succeed and go to college, and we're going to go back every summer with them, and we meet with them every Saturday. God is so good. There was one little boy, he was just special, he just grabbed my heart. I love all the kids, but this kid, there was just something about him. And I just took him under my wing. I loved him and was just so glad he was a part of my life now. And my husband and I had to drive him to a doctor's appointment in Bridgeton the very last week of the program this summer. And we're driving, and we get near our house, right? And I live a mile from where I grew up. And we get near our house, and he said, hey, that's the school I went to. Before I got removed from, my home, that's the school that I went to. And so I started probing. I don't like to ask the kids about their stories because it's traumatic. But all of a sudden, I realized that his last name was the same last name of my best friend. So I started probing him. Oh, I don't know if my mother's alive or dead. I don't know. I grew up here, and this was my experience. And he starts telling me his story. And I just turned around. I said, Anthony, who is your mother? Sure enough, she was gone, but her baby was in the back seat of my car. God is so good. He's so specific. He's so specific. So we all have a role to play. We all have a contribution to make that is not limited in any way by what we've done, what our skills are, what our talents are, what we think we're capable of. It's only limited by, our willingness to let God be God in our lives. And we don't have to have all the answers, because when we decide that we're going to show up in service to others, He begins to write a beautiful story that only can be God from beginning to end in perfect story. I watched this Republican debate. I'm concerned. I'm concerned about America. I'm concerned that we're teaching our children that leadership is about being loud and bossy and sexist and pig-headed and calling people names, when what we need is servant leadership. We need to teach that humility is strength. But I'm not waiting for the next election. We can't wait for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton to change the child abuse statistics on Pearl Street. I'm not even meeting with, I'm not going to say it. It's up to us, right? We're called. We're the ones with a role to play. We're the ones with a contribution to make. There is a study called Kids Count, and it's funded by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, and it evaluates child well-being county by county in our state across 13 different indicators. Cumberland County keeps coming in last place. We have a role to play. We have a contribution to make. And Pastor, I believe he's called us here for this time to work together. You said you're excited. I'm just showing up to what you and Mayor you guys have been working and building, and the shower ministry and the Code Blue and the feet. You can't go anywhere in the city without seeing you guys feeding people, innovating, showing up. We all have an opportunity to join their team, to be useful, to show up and just figure out how we can contribute. So a couple of the projects that we're working on, I told you a little bit about CASA. We're desperate for advocates. Told you a little bit about First Star. We have a grand vision for that program. We've created something called the Family Strengthening Network. The idea of that program is that the way that we're going to change families' lives in our community and change these statistics is by churches being better equipped to provide social services. So we partner with churches. We find someone within the church who has a heart for serving. We hire them as a paid family advocate, and they become a social worker within the church to provide services to families within the church's midst and local community. And this project's been funded by the Pascal Sykes Foundation. Rich back there runs it. We've been working together for a long time. And our goal is to, I believe that churches are the key to revitalizing Cumberland County and our nation. That it's up to us, because it's our values-infused perspective and approach, not Donald Trump's approach. It's our approach that's going to provide hope and unity in all of these broken places. We have a role to play like never before. The Family Strengthening Network is one piece of our contribution to that. John back there with Revive South Jersey has a project called Unidos para la Familia. I'm getting better at saying that. A lot of you probably know John, but he sits next to me in my office, and we've been working together for 3 years. He turned CASA around. He helped launch the Family Strengthening Network. We're all together in one place. Out in Monroeville is our office, and that project is a lot like the Family Strengthening Network, but it provides ESL, citizenship, family advocacy to the community here in Bridgeton. We're also working with Temple Vision now. They've got an initiative called Stronger Families, which has come into our universe, and that's all about doing family action planning and family mentoring with people who are incarcerated. 60 to 70% of my kids in CASA are in foster care because their primary caretaker went to prison. So now, through what we're doing at Temple Vision and the Alms Center, we can bring families in and they can do virtual visits. The whole family can come together with a family advocate, do virtual visits, and the partnership with the Department of Corrections enables us to case manage those people, those parents, to become better parents and better equipped to support their families. We're also doing a project in Millville with a housing authority that is similar to the Family Strengthening Network, but it's Millville focused. And we're trying to bring all of this to Bridgeton. We've made sort of an offer on some space down here to move everything here to the center with the help of the mayor. And And we want to take all these projects and programs and see where God leads. So, again, I'm real privileged to be here tonight. I'm so inspired by what this church and community is doing. I watched all the videos, the sermons, hearing that little girl in the video talking about how she has no money. I have a son that age. I take him to Target every time he does something good and he gets a prize. And that little girl, that was her second time coming to get clothes. And it broke my heart. But if not you, who? Where would she go? So thank you for showing up. And I look forward to working together. And, God is leading this community, I have no doubt. And I'm just so thrilled to be a part of it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tammy Morris. I'm the director for the Cumberland Family Shelter on Mays Landing Road in Vineland. We have 2 buildings that are open. We're able to house 112 people. Right now, we have plenty of bed space available. We're staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We do criminal background checks because we are unable to accept any Megan's Law offenders or a violent offender because we do have children on site. The services that we provide, we have a bus that will transport them to seek employment, housing, to the Board of Social Services, to the clinics, to the pharmacy, the laundromat, to Walmart. It's a whole host of things. We also have Bible study on site. We have an agreement with the Bridgeton Public Schools with the McKinney-Vento Act, and tutors will come on site to work with the school-age children. We also prepare 3 meals and a snack every day for our clients. And we do have an on-site clothing closet. I will say we are in desperate need of men's clothing. We never have enough on hand. A lot of times when we have people that arrive, especially the men, they're only wearing what's on their back. They have nothing else. So if you know of anyone who has any extra men's clothing, please try to get a hold of us. I do know that welfare is collecting clothes in-house from their workers this month, and periodically there are other agencies that do collections. I don't know if I've left anything out. Our bus does do Bridgeton on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. And on top of that, we go to Millville and Vineland the other 3 days of the week, morning and afternoons. So if someone does need transportation, if they are homeless, they need to call us first, because we do need to get some background information from them, because I have to do the background check. And we will work it out so that we pick them up in a public location. Unfortunately, we cannot go to private residences because we have no idea of knowing what kind of situation our driver and the other passengers on that bus are going into. We've experienced some bad situations. So it will always be a store, the bus stop, somewhere publicly where we can pick them up. We also have the transit bus. It is on the bus schedule. It lists the Cumberland Family Shelter. We have actually out on Mays Landing Road now 2 bus shelters out there, and the transit drivers will bring the people to our facility. And like I said, there's always staff there 24 hours a day. I did have brochures. The brochures have our shelter phone number, and if you need our number, I can give it to you now. It's 856, of course, 825-3144. But if you forget and you didn't get a brochure, just let me know and I'll be glad to hand you one before I leave tonight.
Any questions?
Yes.
If somebody, say like you get homeless in the middle of the night or something like that,
They call.
they can call.
Oh, I had one last week at 3 a.m. Yes. And all the police departments know about us, the state police as well. and they actually transported that man to our facility. No, although I'm on call 24/7, I don't stay in the building 24/7. But staff will call me, and I'll do the background check from home. And then we're able to. Criminal background check. A Megan's Law offender, or if they have a violent criminal history. They murdered someone and it was, really bad circumstances, they're violent, it just occurred, no, we've had that. And I will say this, we do have a zero tolerance for drugs and alcohol. And if they have a problem, we will try to get them somewhere so they can be screened for either inpatient or outpatient services. But they cannot drink on site or do drugs on site.
So if they got a problem, you would try to give them some help.
Yes. But keep in mind, they have to be willing to receive the help because we can't physically make them.
I'm the director of the Division of Homeless, Cumberland County, and I do several things. One of the first things I always tell people is that I'm a place that you can call when you need information and referrals. So if you're someone that's homeless or you're homeless yourself or whatever, if you call me on the phone, I pretty much can help you and direct you to the right person, the right agency. I try to keep this book as current as possible. This is the Resources in Homeless and At-Risk Services Directory for Cumberland County. And if you need a copy of this, you can go on the internet, on my website, which is Cumberland County, New Jersey, Division of Homeless, and there's a link to it right there. So in that brochure, has the names of most of the shelters if you're homeless. If you need prevention services like rental assistance, utility assistance for people that are on the verge of becoming evicted. We also have information in there about places where you can get low-income medical treatment and medicine. We have information in there about getting clothing. We have the food pantries and the soup kitchens and just about anything you could possibly think about that you would need if you were low income or if you were homeless. So the main thing that you need to remember about me, which will probably make it the easiest, if you remember my phone number, which is 856-453-2171. So if you want to help somebody or you are homeless, just call me and I will help you work through the system. Like Pastor Rob says, it is hard to navigate the system, and it's not always easy to figure out where to go, what to do. And I know a good amount of the resources in the area. One of the other things I do is I help administrate grants and I try to advocate for the homeless. I just do a little bit of everything, but one thing I wanted to talk about tonight was that we have an organization in Cumberland County. It's called the CEASE Committee, Comprehensive Emergency Assistance System. You're not going to remember that, but what it is, it's our county committee where all the various social service agencies come together and we discuss with services in the area and different programs that we have, and it's a place where we get together to do planning and programming for the county. And now recently we've joined with Camden County, Gloucester, and Cape May County to form what's called the Southern New Jersey Continuum of Care, and so we're trying to do regional planning right now so that we can provide what they call permanent supportive housing, or in the world of HUD they call that housing first. Basically what homeless people need is housing. Homeless people need homes. That's the bottom line. And that's a very hard thing to give to people because it's costly. It requires a lot of organizing, requires a lot of people's support. And once we get them into the housing, they need help. We call that supportive services. So if you get somebody into a rental, if they're homeless, and they haven't had a home for a long time or they've never grown up with really good life skills, they really need somebody to hold their hand and help them learn the basics of keeping their own apartment, how to keep a budget, how to go grocery shopping, how to keep their doctor's appointments so they stay healthy. You know, so a lot of the things that we take for granted, those are the kinds of things that we've seen to be productive and to see success. The Housing First model is seen to be the best way to deal with homeless people, and Pastor Rob and a lot of us here are on this committee, and we're trying to bring more of that into the area, and we're also trying to do that through our regional planning through the Southern New Jersey Continuum of Care. And just one more little thing, I don't want to take up too much time, but the whole idea of continuum of care, what that means is that to help homeless people, it requires a lot of different people from a lot of different areas to solve a huge problem in this country. So when you have someone that's homeless, they need support from various people from various areas of social work. For instance, a lot of homeless people have substance abuse issues and mental health issues. So we need that kind of assistance. Some people don't have a full education, like the young lady was talking tonight about, you know, what she went through. You know, you need to get the school involved. I saw Joanna. Oh, she's still here. Hi, Joanna. Joanna's part of the Homeless Advocate Program for the school system. Did you know that we had over 1,000 children last year that were homeless in our school systems? And so that's why we have homeless advocates in almost every one of our public school systems in this county. So it takes a whole community to help the homeless. And that's why organizations like this and meetings like this, when we all come together and we talk and we network and we work together, we can help to solve the problem, because not one person, not one organization, not 20 organizations can solve the homeless problem. It has to be a community effort. So I thank Pastor Rob for all his efforts here with the Code Blue, and Mayor Kelly and everything that's being done in Bridgeton, and all the other good people here that are from the other municipalities. I applaud all of you for the good work that you're doing in Code Blue and coming together and trying to be a part of the solution to the problem that we face. Thank you.
My name is Doris Cunningham. I'm Program Coordinator, Cumberland County Guidance Center, for a program called Intensive Family Support Services. If you're not familiar with the Cumberland County Guidance Center, we are a day mental health facility. We have outpatient services. We have a partial care program. We have 9 different case management programs, depending upon the intensity of services that an individual might need. And then we have my STAR program. Intensive Family Support Services. If you're not, I don't know if you're familiar with NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. The organization recently celebrated their 30th anniversary here in the state of New Jersey. When they first formed, they started researching because they realized that their loved one needed help in their recovery. So they petitioned to the state of New Jersey, and here I am today working for Intensive Family Support Services. What we do is we provide support. We hold the caregivers up. What NAMI found out was that research proves that the stronger a person's support system is, the better recovery they make for their mental health. They have someone to help them, remind them to take their medication, to go to their doctor's office, to go to their medical doctor and get a checkup. Anything that they need. Do they need to get to partial care? What do they need help with? And so those family members who are in the trenches helping their loved ones in their recovery, they're the ones that we hold up every day. We provide support to them. We have support groups. We provide education. We provide entertainment by having what we call respite evenings, and the entire family is welcome to come. It's not just for the caregivers, and we just have a good old time. We do some sort of a party atmosphere, or pizza and a movie, or anything, just to get the families together to socialize. What I find in the program is that among themselves, the families who are engaged also wind up meeting other people. A lot of times, no matter where you are, no matter what the support group is, I'm not going to support group because I don't need people to know what my business is, or I don't want to sit there and hear what other people have to say. But you know what? It works. We've seen it work with many different self-help organizations, and it certainly works for Intensive Family Support Services. They're able to engage with each other. Hey, you know what? I was listening to you in support group today, and you have the same problem that I have. It's the same family member that we're both helping. How did it work for you? And so they begin to, connect with each other. When I first joined the program a couple of years ago, this story really impressed me. It was, I'm not good with storm names, but it was the storm that hit the area in August of 2011. Which one? Oh, I thought that was in June. Could be. Okay. All right. We'll take it. Anyway, this one family got totally wiped out because they wound up with 4 feet of water in their basement and no electricity, of course, no gas, nothing, no utilities. And all the other families that are engaged with IFSS made a meal train to this family every night. They had a hot meal and something for breakfast. And this has nothing to do with their loved ones being sick. This is just caring for each other, helping each other. And it's amazing what these people do. It's amazing to hear them talk about supporting each other, how they support each other in our support groups. It's amazing. So we provide education. We have a Thursday morning that we meet, and we have an educational program, and we have a support group. Every 4th Tuesday of the month, we have a psych ed program, and actually that's open to the public. And it's held at the main office on Carmel Road in Millville, and you are all welcome to come if you'd like to learn about mental health. We talk about diagnoses, we talk about medications, we talk about setting boundaries and limits. We talk about how to set up a contract with your loved one when they're coming out of the hospital to help them remain well. The things they talk about are things like, I want to be with you when you take your medication so that I make sure you take the right medication at the right time. I want to be with you when you go to your doctor's appointments so that I can hear what the doctor has to say, so that when you're home and you get confused, I can help you. And then there are certain limits that they set because sometimes their biological clock is off from the rest of the family. So then they have to set boundaries. No. There's no watching TV at 2 in the morning when I have to get up at 5 to go to work. So they set boundaries. And it really helps. I'm with the program approximately 4 years. I have done intakes on several families. I have seen such turnarounds in these families' lives. They have, I don't want to use the word control because that sounds too strong, but they have a handle on things. From learning from our psych ed programs, they can understand the illness. They can understand what it's doing to the brain. It's not the mind, it's the brain. And we have to understand, while I'm up here, I'm going to take the opportunity to talk about stigma. Stigma is very difficult to overcome. But what I used to tell people that I worked with in case management was, the brain is an organ. Your heart is an organ. Your pancreas is an organ. If you have diabetes, you've got to take that insulin in order to stay well. If you've got a cardiac situation, you've got to take your Coumadin or whatever the doctor has given you to stay well. If you have a mental health disability, you have to take your medication, and you can live a very full, active, and productive life. Albert Einstein was one. Winston Churchill suffered from bipolar disorder. Did you know that? That's an interesting story. Winston Churchill, they say, is one of the greatest leaders in the world, okay? What I found out was he had bipolar disorder. So when he's out, trampling down all the beasts in the world, and, protecting people, and taking care of things, and doing what's got to be done to make things right, he was in his manic state. And then he would regress and go back to his home, and people wouldn't see him for a while. Oh, okay, he's plotting. He's making his next move. He wants to plan everything just right. No, he was suffering the downside of bipolar disorder. Interesting story. There are so many interesting people in the public eye that also have had mental health, though, but they live full, productive, active lives. And that's what we want for our loved ones. And that's how we help our families to help their loved ones.